time is right for fighting in the street, boy.
Yeah, I'm still, certainly, an activist first and a media person second. And one of the reasons that we started leftandsf.com was that we felt like that the issues that we cared about weren't being talked about in ways that made sense to us, that made sense to the folks that we work with every day. And so I think that there's a point at which we're all involved in issues, and we all have work that we do that doesn't get noticed. And sometimes that work is really big things, and sometimes that work is just small at the level of sort of a classic example of getting a stop sign on your street corner. But I think that that people are interested in stories of people are interested in stories about people, in that the most effective pieces that we've done, and the most effective, I think, stories that people are most excited to read are the ones that talk about the experiences of concrete people, and the kid who was hit by the car, and that's why finally in his honor we got a stop sign on this corner. Or some of the folks, one of the things that our blog in its earliest incarnations covered a lot of was the question of transgender folks in bathrooms. And that for a lot of transgender folks, the decision of which bathroom to walk into in a bar, in a restaurant, or in a public place is an incredibly, frightening one, right? And it's one of those situations where those of us who identify with the gender that we're born to, you walk, you go to the boys' bathroom, you go to the women's bathroom, and the hardest it gets is trying to figure out, figure out which, in Spanish, which the right words are, or which little icons mean. But for a lot of folks, it's an incredibly dangerous situation. It's somewhere where people get beat up. It's where people get screamed at. It's where people get thrown out of bars and things like that. And we did some coverage of that when our blog first started. And it was definitely the kind of thing which really spoke to folks, in a way that they didn't expect. And so I think that people's stories around that stuff are really important. I think somebody, most blogs don't try to cultivate a, sort of objective, authorial voice in the sense of well, today, activists came to City Hall in San Francisco and did X. Right? We talk about, well, I was at a rally in San Francisco, or I got married on the street on the steps of City Hall, and I think that speaks to folks in a way that often the sort of objective voice doesn't. So I think that's certainly one way that we can tell our stories, right? Is by telling our stories as us. I think just to sort of jump a little bit in terms of, I'm also a recovering documentary filmmaker. And, I think that particularly those of us who are educated have this feeling that, if we just give them our arguments, right? If we go, well, single-payer healthcare is clearly better than the giant, gob of mess that we have now. And we talk about numbers, and we talk about, the waiting times, and we talk about all this stuff. And that's the kind of thing that works pretty well in a magazine or in a newspaper or in a scholarly article. But a lot of what blogs do, but particularly video and documentaries and things, is again try to personalize those stories. And that what people are not going to remember is how many billions of dollars we're going to save by going to single-payer healthcare, right? They'll remember that it's some money, and that's probably right. And then the other side will say, well, no, it's actually going to cost, you're going to have to wait 300 years to get, surgery or whatever. But, when they hear the story about the kid, and there's been a series of these lately about the kid whose brother can't get cancer treatment from his insurance company has refused him cancer treatment. I don't even remember the reason why, but I know that there's some kid out there who's been refused cancer treatment from his insurance company. And that's the kind of stuff that really, stirs people's emotions and stirs people's anger. And some number of folks will then go and look up the articles and look up the magazine things and search on the web and find the numbers. But that they have to care enough to do that to begin with. And I think that, again, it's a personalization thing. And trying to actually tell personal stories. And I will admit to not, it's often easier to just dump out stats and because I'm kind of a numbers guy, and I get, when I see those numbers, I really want to tell everybody, you're crazy, we need to, do single-payer healthcare because it's going to save us so much money and so much more efficient. Everybody will have healthcare. But again, that people don't really care about that unless they have a reason to they have a face or a series of faces to prove that.
Well, Sasha's an expert on blogging. Mother Jones has a blog, which I contribute to, but it's a newsy blog. It's not a community blog or blog written by an individual. So the rules are kind of different. So I can only really talk about what I've heard from other people and what I've read. And really, blogging is something that you can talk about for hours just in and of itself. But I guess, a quick crash course would be write what you know, obviously. I think Sasha's right about, things being personal as opposed to, in third person newsy. You need to cultivate relationships with other blogs so you can cross-link with them, which will then cause you to rise up in Google faster and get more hits, and it'll refer readers to you. I guess that goes for other blogs as well as things like indie media, where you want to kind of just develop relationships with other online communities, not just blogs. Beyond that, it's a tough fight. The other thing is there are things like Dig and Reddit, which are news aggregators, and you can get your entry posted there, and then people think it's good, they'll vote on it, and that drives more readers to you. It all gets, it's kind of technical, but those are a few things you can do.